being asked is all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And then to till means to break it up into particles or pieces and make it easier to tame. Savages, anyone? Heathen? That's what the whole tilling was about. It was about breaking you down. This is what God in Genesis told them to do. Get it through your head. It ain't no other way around it. Once you dig deep enough, anything else, question it. But I'm telling you, there's no way around those terms all in one group talking about a certain people without it talking about you. Now that we know who we are. And this is why it's important to know and stand in that, and then we need to proceed. Owned mostly by the French. In the 1400s, blacks owned, I'm sorry, and 1400 blacks owned mostly by British. These have to be freedmen of some kind of, in some kind of way. I'm not sure. I'm just saying. Fowl of the air. Whenever I think French, we talking fowl of the air. Fowl of the air. Okay? And that's why some of those tribes have fowl or a bird or an eagle or something on their teepees or on their dress, because they represent those particular people, which are the fowl of the air. And let them come in and go above the earth. So even though they came through the earth, the womb of the earth, or the the original, we'll just say original, prehistoric woman, heavily melanated, heavy, dark pigmented woman. See, even though they came through the womb as indigenous offspring or grasses, they came above them in power. Okay? Not too much, but as a people, they are above you in this system. Okay? Trudel also noted 31 marriages took place between French colonists and Aboriginal slaves. So what are we talking about here? What dark skinned group of people are we talking about then? Because some of these, the old French, I know were dark, and some of these French people were dark. In the Aboriginal slaves, when we started off talking about the indigenous peoples in their slave trade, but now we're talking about the French colonists and the Aboriginal slaves, which are still considered, like it said, some form of a first people or people that are tied to the land, the earth. See, because the earth had been put down in the Sheol or hell. That's you, the originals. So anything that sprung from you will be above you on their chart or in their caste system as commoners, peasants, and servants. Okay, let's see. So these French people married Aboriginal people in order to what? And these are the people that lived in all those things, those buildings and stuff, your old post offices that are in those old buildings from the 1700s and 1800s. I bet you they had something to do with that. I bet they had something to do with that. Okay. So plantations prior to the mass settlement by their own people in the New World, colonies such as English Carolinas, Spanish Florida, English, Spanish, and French. Louisiana and what is now the Southern United States Corporation had a plantation economy. A plantation economy is an economy based on agricultural mass production, usually of a few commodity crops. Okay? See? Now, could we be talking about high class? Like a Beyonce's bloodline? Because you think that these people ain't tied to these people in these politics and these politicians. You better stop. Plantation economy, okay, is an economy based on agricultural mass production. Again, agricultural, be careful because we're talking about people when it's talking about that too. Cultivating, irrigating, planting, seeding, usually of a few commodity crops grown on large farms called plantations. a large farm called a plantation. Well, damn, why can't we just call it, if it was just cotton and sugar, why can't we just call it a large thing of sugar? See, we don't hear about grapes and shit being grown. We don't hear about zucchini and shit. They don't even talk about watermelon farms. See? But again, be careful because commodity, you could be a commodity. Crops grown on large farms, that is the animals, and animals also is used to represent people in etymology of animals. So, and they used to call you certain animals. So when we're talking about this, they're not just talking about the things that was on the planet. It was also the people that were coming out or spawning from that group. And that's why they were trading off people from their parents and things like that, because it was to people places, to people America. Okay. Again, this is why we'll never really know your real genealogy. But it's good if it makes you feel good, and if you think you need papers to show these people that don't give a damn about them at the or will just change them if they want to. That is fine. It's entertaining to know that. It settles something in the soul to know a certain amount of your genealogy. But what I'm saying is, will it matter in the end? Plantation economies rely on export of cash crops. Okay, export on cash crops. Again, what did they treat you any better than any of their animals on the plantation? Did they treat you better than any other crops? The real crops were probably treated better than you, but again, you were a crop as well. As a source of income, prominent crops. That's why they talk about, oh, I had these kind of, Negroes on this plantation looking at your teeth and measuring your arms and shit. Prominent crops. So again, okay, a few commodity crops grown on large farms called plantations. Okay. Plantation economies rely on the export of cash crops as a source of income. Prominent crops, which is another. So, what did it say? Cash crops, commodity crops, and prominent crops. Let's look them up. Included. Okay, so the prominent crop. So we wasn't talking about that up here. We wasn't talking about these things here up there when we talk about the commodity crops and the cash crops. Okay, we're talking about prominent crops when we're talking about these kind of resources. Okay, as cotton, rubber, sugar, and cane, and etc. Where slaves mostly indigenous, that's the closest to the earth or the original, worked on plantations, and extensive slave trade participated in by Indians themselves, provided labor. Okay, an extensive slave trade participated in. No, so if we're talking about the indigenous slave trade and we're talking about all this stuff, and now they're saying that um, the slave trade participated in by Indians themselves, provided labor. Which Indians are we talking about? Egyptian Indians? Nubian Indians? What kind of Indians we talking about? Why we didn't just say Native Americans still? Why did we say Indians? Who else owned slaves? Did you own native slaves? Foreign slaves? Slavic slaves? Did you? Maybe. I'm just saying. Themselves provided labor. Okay. Extensive slave trade participated in by Indians themselves, provided labor. So Indians provided labor as well. Okay, which Indians are we talking about at this point in time, though? Okay, because it can either go either way. Native American, actual Native Americans, today's Native Americans, okay, owning so-called Indians, or would it be Indians or Indian Aborigines or original Indians, or were they already breaking you up in classes and and breaking you up by skin color. And so again, you just thought the darker ones, hey, we have to get rid of them. This is how we've been bred. This is what we know. This is what we've been taught from I don't know how long, how many centuries already. You know what I'm saying? It's best for us to be honoring God than them. Okay. Affected all tribes in the area and was at the center of the economy of the region. So we'll just stop there. And I'm not going to read this whole thing. Let's see if we can find anything else that would be something here. So it talks about Spain. Okay, slavery in Native Americans was illegal in Spain and Spanish territories. I wonder why. I wonder why. Was it because some of these people, most of them came from some of these areas? However, slavery in other contexts as an institution still existed in Spain itself. Okay, and are we talking about Spain, which would be in Spain probably over there across the sea? Or are we talking about Spanish territories, which would be here in the Americas now? See? So when all this stuff was being delivered and all these things were happening, which one was it happening from? As an institution still existed in Spain. So not in Spanish territory. So again, it was illegal in Spain or wait a minute. Slavery of Native Americans was illegal in Spain or Spanish territories. So it's telling you in Spain or Spanish. Why didn't it say and? In Spain and Spanish territories. I'm just asking. However, slavery in other contexts as an institution in constituents or constituents or institution. Okay. I know what it said. I was just, wording other terms. Still existed in Spain itself. Okay. So that's in Spain. Okay. Particularly the Ottoman and Barbary prisoners and Muslim rebels, Moab or southeastern Aboriginals or indigenous peoples from southern Spain following the Reconquista. Okay. So anyhow, it was a period in history of Iberian Peninsula. Again, is it where they say it is today, or was it another part of it, or duality, or the origin of it in another place? About 780 years between the Umayyad. Oh, I was reading. Okay. Umayyad conquest of Hispania in 711. Now, I just, I always wonder if we add that one back in front of that 7 and we say 1711, what can we find that resembles this whole thing that was going on? That's how they do. That's how they do. I'm just telling you. Okay. So let's see. This is going to talk about Spain a little bit. Okay. It's talking about things here. In Mexico, Peru, and other parts of Spanish America, indigenous slaves were much more important economically for the economy and beneficiaries of the system because they would benefit from it, because they would be privileged, because they would be indigenous and not the original, even though they sprung from the original of the system, were much more resilient and resourceful. Indigenous slavery continued for centuries. In Peru, the Spanish I was about to say imam, emissary sent to enforce the new laws, just like God was doing, sending people to, make new laws, was murdered and beheaded in Mexico. The Spanish emissary, Francisco, a member of Spanish Inquisition and Council of the Indies, agreed to suspend the law and appeal to the king. Some concessions were made. Okay. Let's see. Spanish movement. Okay. Discovering silver. Let's see. 1680, a revolt, unrest among the Indians of North Mexico. in the hands of the Navajo, Ute, Comanche, Apache. Okay, so let's see, Chile. Okay, anti-slavery campaign began with an order of Mariana of Austria in 1667, freeing all Indian slaves in Peru and had been captured in Chile. Her order was met with disbelief and dismay in Peru. Without exception, she freed the Indian slaves of Mexico in 1672. So it'd be very important to go look into her stuff, see if you can find any kind of writings or any kind of things left over from that. After receiving a plea from the Pope, she freed the slaves. Now, it don't say the Indian slaves. After a plea from the Pope, wouldn't he be in the house of God? I would think he would. Or the abode in the heavens, or the higher realms, or put on high amongst the people as some kind of idol to worship, like your celebrities or your celebrities and your politicians and their policies and their police to go along with it. She freed slaves, just regular slaves or Slavs. You see what I'm saying? Of the southern Andes. Okay. Charles II issued in 1679, Charles II issued a general declaration freeing all indigenous slaves. So now we're back to talking about indigenous slaves. They're doing this because it means something, because everything is talking about a specific people. You just have to, you can't go clumping everything together. That's what they teach you in church with the Bible. And that's one of the biggest mistakes. In Spanish America in 1680, this was included in the whatever you see it here, a codification of the laws in Spanish America. The Caribs, or cannibals, or canon, just saying, knights maybe, I don't know, were the only exception. Okay, let's see. Mexico. After Mexico's independence in 1821, which is exactly 10 years before. See, it's important to look at that even when you're looking at the Bible and it says 10 years later and stuff like that. Sometimes when you match up these things, when you can find it like this might be something that may help you. Okay. It did not abolish black slavery until 1829. I wonder why. When a hero is hero of the insurgency, Vincent El Negrito. Let's see what he looked like. Yeah, he looked like a little man. Was president at Independence, racial and caste. Okay, everything is about the caste. Everything is about the caste system. Everything is about the caste. Everything. Categories were abolished. When? So when he was in here, the caste was abolished. So is it a caste system? Is it classism? Is it slavery? What are we really talking about when we're talking about all of these things put together? However, the revolution had disrupted the defense at the border, the Presidios, okay, I'm guessing maybe president, and the mining region of North Mexico, okay. So again, let's see, we're just going through here really quickly. Territories acquired by the United States from Mexico. The report sustained the traffic of Indian slaves and prevalence of peonage. Okay. Let's see. New Mexico. New Mexico, as America's assumed the governance of Mexican-American War. Okay. Let's see. California. The Mexicans sold. These are things we should be looking up, guys. Secular, even though around this time everything had already been mixed and mingled. Okay. So you have to be careful who you're talking about or reading about at that point. Okay. Secularization Act of 1833, again, very close to the removal or the, okay, freed the Indians attached to the Mission of California, providing for distribution of land to Mission Indians and sale of remaining grazing land. So, okay, so the remaining uh, immigrants, grasses, or land, plots, or whatever. But I'm just saying, okay? Freed the Indians attached to the mission of California, providing for distribution of land, to distribute land, earth, original people, or indigenous, to missions, to mission Indians. So giving them to mission Indians and sell the remaining grazing land. So the remaining offspring or grazes or that which had sprung from the earth. Through grants and auctions, the bulk of the land. Okay, so again, through grants and auctions, slaves were sold at auctions as well, remember? Or granted, they were granted to other people, okay? And land, but we talk more about slaves, seems, was transferred to wealthy Californios and other investors. Any Indian who had received land soon fell into debt, peonage, and became attached to the new ranchos. So the new owner, probably, I don't know, or just connected to the property, like we've already been said. The workforce was supplemented with Indians who had been captured. Okay, I'm trying to tell you something. Something was going on in the 1800s. In the mid to 1800s, something was going on. Immigrating. So these are people that came from another place. So immigrating Americans. Now, migration, I believe, is something that happens upon the land. But how can someone be an immigrating American? You know what I'm saying? That means that they must be the people that took someone else's standing in law. And maybe this is why it's right after 1828. So you see what I'm saying? Immigrating Americans. So again, now the people that were immigrating over here coming in were now using your term American. So things happen at different, they've given you a perception as to when things happen and to keep your mind in those years when it comes to slavery, when some of these people did not even go into this form of servitude until the 1800s. I'm just saying. They're going to tell you that they were still bringing them from Africa into there, but, or again, they will tell you that they were still bringing them from Africa over to here, but that just means that they were taking you out of your natural habitat or out of your standing and placing you under the control of the government. In the same pattern with varying degrees of grace, that there were no black slaves and importation of Chinese as laborers was in the future. Wait, immigrating Americans fell into the same pattern with varying degrees of grace. So with the grace of God, I'm just saying, there were no black slaves and importation of Chinese as laborers was in the future. So there were none of these blacks at what they're talking about. When they say that, you have to question if it really was. Because everything is whatever they said it wasn't, is what it seems. And importation of Chinese as laborers was in the future. So again, the Chinese came later. Okay. Utah, the Mormons. If you want to know more about looking at the landmass and looking at where certain things in the biblical text are, look to the Mormons. Look to the Mormons. They really do, and I don't know why people talk about it so weird. Like, what they say that they know, Oh shoot! Sorry, I had to stretch. Okay, so look to the Mormons. If you want to know more about locations of biblical places, look to the Mormons. That's all I can say. They have so much information. And I don't know why it's kept in some kind of like a nest of something. Why don't all of us in America talk about the stuff that they talk about? It's just kind of crazy a little bit to not refer to them if they're talking about the same thing we're talking about. I'm not saying you have to go with them, but they have a lot of information online that will show you certain pinpointed places in the Bible. And they're talking about it as if it's something else. But I think that I don't know. I don't know. You'll see what I'm saying. Okay. So, but they mention stuff about this, and if you read the Book of Mormons, I've not read the whole thing, but I've read through it several times. Um, I don't know. It's one of the books that also helped me see. So, okay. Were reluctant. They killed one child and began torturing others. Wait. Soon after the Mormons settled in Salt Lake City, they were visited by a band. So we're not talking about tribes anymore. We're talking about bands now of Utes who insisted on trading 2 young slaves to them. When the Mormons were reluctant, they killed one child and began torturing the other. The Utes generally slaved among the Paiutes of the Great Basin. The Mormons, or which I think these have to do with Nubian people. That's just my opinion right off. I mean, it just came to me now, and that's just what I've been thinking. The Mormons, on consideration, determined that purchasing slaves was a religious duty. Okay, but what kind? They didn't want anything with any kind of tinge of anything, probably. I'm just saying. Indians being degraded. Okay, religious duty. Indians being degraded. Israelites whose skin. Hold on. Hold on. Wait a minute. Okay. It was a religious duty. Okay. Indians being degraded. Degraded. Israelites whose skin had turned black due to their evil ways. This is the ways of going against God. Because he was trying to do something over here. He was trying to populate the earth. He was trying to steal DNA from the earth in order to make his groups of people. And guess what? When he saw it was light, it was good. God, I don't know how to explain it to you. Read the damn book of Genesis again. And when he keep talking about it was good after he turned shit light, that is talking about taking it from you, heavily melanated people, to something else. And when Adam and Eve went and took that fruit that never said a fucking apple in their covering or their skin, okay, we're talking about they had to cover themselves, okay? And God came and looked in the garden and said, what the hell is going on? He saw that you were not doing what you were supposed to be doing, and that is making things light. Again, another story about them falling in love with the women and thought they were beautiful, and they did these things. That was another way that they went against God. So again, this is why I'm trying to tell you, same thing was going on in Genesis, even though you've been given a false perception of that. They were producing something that was not light or right to fit into his kingdom. And this is why they were punished. And this is why the labor pains came, which means the birthing of the nation came and had a very, and so-called heavily melanated people or the original people had a hard time with it. It wasn't a smooth sailing because you didn't do it right. So now the harshness is coming. Now the bloodshed is coming. Now I'm sending people here to make sure that the shit get done the way I said I wanted to get it done. And I'm bringing other nations in with them in abundance so that we can get this handled once and for all. Just my opinion. Okay? This is what I see from what I'm reading. And I'm not afraid to say anything about God or the Bible or anything. That's already gone. I'm doing what I came here to do. You understand what I'm saying? I don't care who like it and who don't. You understand? The Utes generally slaved amongst the, okay, we already read that. The Mormons, okay, on consideration, determined that purchasing slaves was a religious duty. The Indians being degraded Israelites whose skin had turned black due to their evil ways or devil ways. Same thing, you put that D right here, you got devil. And then if you say good, you take one of the O's away, you got God. Same damn thing. As passed the Act for Relief of Indian Slaves as Prisoners. Now, hold on. This probably got something to do with you. I'm going to have to look into this one. The Act for the Relief, rely, EF, of Indian slaves and prisoners. Indian slaves and prisoners. Prisoners of war, maybe? I don't know. Which was passed on March 7th, 1852, in the Utah Territory, dealt with Indian slavery. A similar law, the Act of Relation, to service. I was thinking relation, but we won't go that far, okay? We won't go that far. So relation to service, okay, which had made slavery legal in the territory, had been passed on February 4th, 1852. In 1852, authorized holding of purchased slaves for 20 years after purchase, for authorized holding of purchased slaves for 20 years after purchase. So again, no matter how old you are, probably, you would be purchased for 20 years. Okay. So if you were 7, when you get 27. If you were 80, is when you're 100. After, life among the Mormons was lonely for Indians. Again, because the Mormons wasn't dealing with you. The Mormons wasn't laying with you. The Mormons did not want to mix with you. All that other complex stuff, all the unnecessary ill will things that happen to some of these so-called slaves, really prisoners of war or so-called black people, was because of jealous things that were going on that they were not supposed to be doing with you, but they couldn't help themselves. See, I would imagine with the Mormons it was cutthroat. You understand? They were obedient to their God. Life among the Mormons was lonely for the Indian slaves. Again, there was nothing, it was strict. And they wasn't friends and having laughter and having children and all this other shit that was going on in the other so-called plantations. The Mormons declined to, oh, look at what the fuck I'm saying right here. Look, I'm sorry, excuse me. Y'all, I'll be getting excited. I'm sorry. I'm honestly on my life. I did not even see this part. Okay, so yes, the Mormons, well, let me not speak too soon. I get excited, y'all, and then I speak too soon, and we may not even be where I'm talking about we at. Okay, so the Mormons declined to breed with them, and they were cut off from their tribes, to cut you off from the nation, to cut you off from your people. Look at this. The Mormons declined to breed with them. I'm telling you, they didn't want nothing to do with you. So, anyways, that's confirmation for me. That's confirmation for me, honey. See. Because it's so funny how people that haven't even gone past the King James Version, that don't do any etymology or use any other resources to come up with their information, try to come for us when all we're doing is showing you that there could be another way. You don't even have to listen to me. You don't have to think the way I'm thinking. I just want you to think on your own. You should be able to come up with something that exposes the fact that this stuff was not meant for you, and that you're holding on to something that is harming you by having these ways of thinking that are keeping you in your situation. You yourself, not the white man, not the pale face. Again, it just ain't that way. Scores of Navajo slaves, were taken by Mexican and Ute slavers. Again, these are a type of Mongoloid or Asian group of people here. But that don't mean that they didn't spring from original people here in the Americas that were original dark melanated people. You see what I'm saying? Let's see what it say. Okay. UT people are aboriginal. Okay. See? Listen. But they didn't look like that again until later. Okay. UT people are aboriginal of the UT tribe and culture. Remember what we read about culture just not that long ago? And are among the Great Basin classification caste system. I'm telling you. Of indigenous people. They have lived in the region of present day Utah and Colorado for centuries. In addition to their home regions within Colorado and Utah, their hunting grounds existed. You can read that on your own. Okay, let's see. Come on. This video is about to be so long. Okay, let's see what these people. Native American. So Navajo are Native American people of the Southwest United States. And again, I just don't know. I just don't know. I just don't know. Long Walk of the Navajo. Okay. This will be something good to look into too. I'm just saying. There's so many things I want to say that I'm not going to say because we're not going to get into it. Were sold into the new settlement in Costilla and Conillos counties in what is now Colorado. Okay. Let's see. Carolina, the policy in prop, proprietors, sorry, preparators. Okay, I'm gonna have a hard time with that one. Of English Carolina was no Indian upon an occasion or pretense whatsoever is to be made a slave. No Indian upon an occasion or pretense whatsoever is to be made a slave, or without his own consent be carried out of Carolina. This is where my people on my daddy's side from. Nevertheless, Native Americans. No, okay. So now we go to talking about this. Is talking about Indians. Now we're going to talk about Native Americans. So, nevertheless, Native American slaves were one of the principal people. I don't know. Exports of the province of Carolina to Barbados and other West Indian islands during the 17th century or maybe the 1600s. It was claimed that slaves purchased from Indian slavers gave now Indians, we're talking a lot about Indian slavers now that we go back to the 1600s, 17th century. Indian slavers gave consent to work or be transported. The good intentions of the you see what it is, who were also considered or concerned about slaving results in conflict with the neighboring tribes, were frustrated by the possibilities of for profit to colonial traders who build the foundation of substantial fortunes on Indian and African slavery. It was only in the 1750s that there was substantial migration. Now, if I'm not mistaken, migration is something that happens on the place, not like going from a far distance. It's like being in California and moving to New York. Okay. Of subsistence farmers to the Carolinas. Again, farmers. These are cultivators. These are people that's also changing the soil. They're working with the soil. Okay. to the Carolinas prior to the economy was based on plantations manned by Indians. So plantations manned by Indians. Then, as more were imported by African slaves, okay, then as more were imported by African slaves, more were imported by African slaves. What set Carolina apart from other colonies, English colonies on the Atlantic coast of North America, was not allowing slavery. Why? Because they were prisoners of war. The other colonies had some slavery at points in their history when Indian captives, we still talking about Indians here, were available, but a substantial population of potential slaves in its uh, hinterlands. Wait a minute. The superiority of English trade goods over that of the competing French and Spanish played an important role in centralizing trade in Carolina. The indigenous enslavement of indigenous peoples, okay, the pre-Columbian Mesoamerica, the most common forms of slavery were those of prisoners of war. I've been sharing a lot of images of this. And debtors. People unable to pay back a debt could be sentenced to work as a slave to a slave to the person owed until the debt was worked off. Slavery was not usually hereditary. Children of slaves were born free. Most victims of human sacrifice, that's what I was trying to come up with earlier, sacrificing your first son or whatever. Most victims of human sacrifice were prisoners of war or slaves. Human sacrifice is the act of killing one or more humans as a part of a ritual. Now, is that killing you by law or is that killing you physically? Or I know it's both, but I'm just saying. Now that we know that there's two ways to die, this is what I'm trying to implant, okay, or get you to see. Usually intended to please or appease a god. Again, this is what we was just talking about. I just couldn't come up with the word. Spirits of the dead ancestors. Okay, again, what's that talking about? Such as a propitiatory propitiatory, you forget it. I ain't even gonna try. Offering or as a retainer. Sacrifice when a king or a lord or a son of God. Servants were killed in order for them to continue to serve the something. So again, they give you these images and you see that people are being killed, and so you're thinking murder when we could be thinking that they were sacrificed or killed off by law. Of course, whenever they give you a image of something, they want you to see it that way. They don't want that other way to come into your mind now that we know what's going on here to a certain extent. That is all. So we're going to go ahead and just skim over. And then it says a few tribes became slavers, capturing large numbers of indigenous tribes for sale to planters. Again, planters, cultivators, same thing. We're talking about in Genesis. Traders or other Indians. Okay. The Westo, who first sold slaves to the colony of Virginia, the Virgin, moved south and became principal ally enslavers of Carolina until they themselves were exterminated as a tribe and sold into slavery in the West Indies. The Savannah, a branch of Shawnee, were recruited to fill the role of slavers to the colonies. Comanche, okay, whatever. Okay, so again, that was a very long video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up, comment, rate, and subscribe. And hit the bell notification if you want to see more videos. Yeah. So I hope that that was something that was good for you guys. I learned a lot of new things today with you, and I hope to continue to do so. So again, thanks a lot and take care.